Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 big Ark tames, so let's get into it. In at number 10 we have the Moser, and this creature really does deserve to be on this list for many reasons, and in my opinion it is the best big sea creature. I wouldn't really say the Basilosaurus counts, as it is slightly too small of a creature, but you know, you could argue against that as well. But in terms of the Moser, this thing is an absolute powerhouse of a creature. It has a very great bite, and with the X-Mosers on Genesis Part 1, you have yourself an even better version of this creature, and they are really great options if you want to defeat the Moser, although I've only ever used Megalodons for it. But you know, considering the list, they're obviously not going to make it. Now, this might slightly contradict my last thing of saying the Basilo is too small to be on this list, as the UT is kind of not considered a really big creature, but it is a somewhat similar size to the Rex actually, and compared to things like Allos and Carnos and all those things, it is bigger than them, and I'm putting the bar at the UT. The UT is the smallest creature on this list, by the way, which is obviously why I wouldn't have put it higher, as they also do need to be a big creature and a powerful one to be on this list, and this isn't the biggest out there, although I'd still definitely call it a big creature. It definitely does fit that for sure. And in terms of its abilities, this thing is a really great boss creature, with its courage roar buffing your tames on your side, obviously, and allowing you to deal even more damage to the boss and have damage reduction on top of that, which is just a really nice thing to have. And its fear roar is great as well for debuffing enemy creatures, although not very useful for bosses because obviously of the size limit, but great if someone's trying to raid your base on a Pteranodon, and you can just use the fear roar and then they simply can't even raid you anymore. Now, next up we have the Bronto, and this could definitely count as a big creature. The Bronto is absolutely huge, and it is one to be admired. This creature is a very great gatherer of berries, and with its platform saddle you can also build a metal farm on the back of this thing, although that isn't the best use for these things now, considering cryopods exist, so you can very easily transport them, and obviously if you have a platform saddle on a creature, it's just going to demolish when the cryopod is used on this creature, so that isn't actually very widely used anymore, and they're just mainly used to be cryoed around and gather berries, which is a great use for this thing, as its tail is so long it can gather so many bushes at one time. Definitely a creature if you haven't tamed already, which you should tame at some point. And next up we have the Rex, and the Rex really did have to be on this list at some point. It is one of those big carnivores, and not the biggest, which is obviously why it isn't further along in the list. It is still a carnivore of very decent size, which deserves to be on this list in my opinion, and for obvious reasons. This is basically the best boss creature, because creatures like the Giga and the Crocodonsaurus aren't allowed into most boss fights. Obviously the exception being the extinction boss fights, as they are allowed into those, but they are really an outlaw, as they are so much more powerful than many, if not really all, other bosses on all other maps. And yes, you could say the Genesis bosses are quite strong as well, but still not as strong as the Titans, which you'll find on Extinction. But the Rex isn't meant for that kind of boss fight. It's meant for the kind of boss fight which you'll find on the island, a very linear one, and actually the one you'll find on Genesis Part 1 as well. X-Rexes. Is it X-Rexes? I think there are. There are X-Rexes for sure. Can't remember if yeah, it has to be X-Rexes. X-Rexes on Gen 1 are a great shout as well if you're on Gen 1, as you have even more buffed Rexes. And if you have Gen 1, just get some X-Rexes and transfer them onto any other map, which obviously you'll be playing on, and it will be a really great addition to your creature library, as you have an even more buffed creature of the creature which we all know and love. Next up we have the Astrocetus, and this definitely is a huge creature, and also if you didn't know this already, Astrocetus means space whale. Just something cool if you didn't know that, but it's pretty obvious by what it is anyway, and astronaut, you know, and Cetus is quite commonly known for being whale. Either way, this thing literally is a space whale, although it doesn't need to be in space to fly, but you know, with its magic abilities, I can't remember which, there's some kind of charge it has, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And this is an absolute PvP power haul for so many things, as it is so versatile for any PvP use. And it actually is a surprisingly fast creature as well with its teleporting abilities. Definitely a creature which you should not underestimate. In at number 5 is the Golem, or the Rock Elemental, whichever one you really want to call it. Most people call this thing the Golem, so I'm just going to go along with that one. And this is a huge buff stone being which is extremely powerful, as are pretty much every creature. Actually, just every creature on this list is quite powerful, although the Bronto doesn't really rack up in the melee damage department. But this thing definitely does. It has a huge attack, which deals so much damage, and on Scorched Earth, for defeating Deathworms, it is a great ability to have. Although not really an ability, it's just the fact that it just deals insane damage. And obviously, Deathworms can be used to gather Deathworm horns, which are great for taming Mantises, and the Mantis is a truly tremendous tame, which everyone on Scorched Earth, or even maps like Ragnarok, should tame. I'm not sure about what other maps these things spawn on apart from Scorched Earth, but I know they do appear on some other DLC maps, and I think they do spawn on Extinction. Now we have the Giga, and you could probably expect this thing to be on the list. This is an absolute powerhouse of a tame, and it has not really any abilities apart from its sheer strength. And sadly, its stamina is one which really should not be celebrated in any way. Its stamina is absolutely awful. I don't know why its stamina is that bad, considering the next creature on the list is of similar size and of similar use, and its mobility is actually really great. But the Giga is still fantastic at dealing all of that damage. The amount of damage this creature deals is absolutely insane. Like, I can't really, even to this day, get over how much damage the Giga deals. When you compare it to a creature like a Rex, this thing is so much larger than a Rex, and also just deals so much more damage. And sadly, when tamed, it loses its bleed ability, although wild ones do still keep that, but the next creature on this list does keep its bleed ability. Also, you can just see how big the Giga is there, as it didn't even need to swim to cross that river. This thing is an absolute hunking beast, which, as always, you should name Tiny Tim. If you know the reference, comment it down below. And now, the creature which I was talking about was pretty obviously the Carcharodontosaurus. This is a creature of immense power, and one which should be praised by any Ark player, and is actually one of the more recent additions to the game, and is an absolutely huge powerhouse of a creature with a wealth of great abilities, pretty much all the same as the Giga, apart from its Blood Rage, which allows it to do even more damage than the Giga, while not having a rage meter and having the mobility to actually be useful for other things apart from just purely fighting stuff, although the extra stamina you really are going to notice. And yes, it doesn't have the best one, and you shouldn't level it like I'm showing here in this example, but you can, and you can still get it to a high amount of stamina, but you'll probably just want a stamina mutation if you're going for a high stamina Carcharodontosaurus. Otherwise, obviously, you're just going to go for those damage and health mutations, and they are going to be much more useful. And compared to the Giga, this thing's taming method is also a lot more of an interesting one, and I have a guide on my channel if you want to know how to actually tame one of these things. In at number 2, we have the Rhinognatha, and this is a big creature, and I'm going to count it as one because it can pick up creatures like the Rex, and it is an absolute powerhouse, and one which is extremely useful and extremely accessible to any Ark player out there, apart from mobile players, and I don't know if this thing has come to Switch yet, but it may do, considering it does spawn on the island, and that would really make sense overall, wouldn't it? But I'm not sure on that one. But still, for PS4, Xbox and PC players, you have this creature for sure to use in your Ark experience. Obviously, only spawning on the island and Lost Island in any swamp biomes. And in the old version of Ark, just being ASE, these things are actually extremely rare to find, and you can obviously raise the dino count or use Destroy Wild Dinos to do a dino wipe and then allow more of these things to spawn on your map. Whereas in ASA, there are just so many of these things. Actually, I think there's a bit of an overspawn. I feel as if there are too many of these things. If you want to know how to tame one though, you'll want to get the pheromone out of a male Rhinognatha, which you can do by killing it. Then you'll want to tame yourself a Bronto. Some other tames are usable as well, but the Bronto is advised. Then after that, you're going to want to get those resources, which were on screen about 10 seconds ago. Not necessary if you do want to actually tame this thing, but only necessary if you want 100% effectiveness, which, you know, may not be worth it in a lot of cases, considering how difficult all of those resources actually are to obtain. And then after that, you're going to want to net gun it or trap it in some way, and then get its health down as low as you possibly can. Use the magnifying glass if you obviously don't use the awesome spyglass mod like I do, and obviously you won't have access to that in ASA at the moment as it isn't in the mod selection. Then you want to feed that pheromone to your Bronto, and then dismount your Bronto, and then just kind of watch from afar really. It's not going to attack you if you've done it right. It will simply impregnate your dino, and then your dino will roll over after its cravings timer, which is where all those resources are useful, and then a baby Rhinognatha will come out, and you have yourself a full Rhinognatha. And in at number 1, we have the Reaper. And what really did you expect? This is probably, if not definitely, the best big tame out there. It has the mobility, it has the damage, it has the looks, and it has the taming method to go along with it. So let's start with that taming method. Essentially what you do is you'll find a Reaper Queen in the wild. Then after that, you'll want to trap it, and you'll probably have a light pet on you, but not during a later step, as I'm not sure if it will work. But damaging it, it will obviously be easier to get it to below 1000 health, which is what I think it is. Either way, it will have a purple glow. Use a light pet for that stage, and then obviously turn the light off, go up to it, and then it will impregnate you, and then you will gather loads and loads of XP to get 100% effectiveness. Again, not necessary, but it is a really fun step in the taming. And then you'll want some Reaper pheromone glands for when the baby Reaper is born, as it will kill you a lot of times, and they're kind of useful in aiding with actually just getting that first imprint on the baby to even claim it as yours, as it can be an absolute pain sometimes. And then once tamed, you got yourself a beast of a creature which deals so much damage and actually has a lot of mobility too, and a wealth of abilities, including that tail ability which it has, which I'm not sure if it does torpor or not, but it is definitely a creature which deals insane amounts of damage, and it is just a really cool one on top of that. The top 5 best Ark boss creatures, so without further ado, let's get straight into it. So coming in at the number 10 spot, I've decided to put the Mantis, as I find this creature is highly effective in boss scenarios. It is quite a fast, rapid creature, and also with that it can wield weapons too. It is a really valuable one for defeating the Manticore on Scorched Earth. That's definitely where I would advise it the most out of all of these, and although the tame method can be a little bit obnoxious in cases, I find it is not too bad, and there are some creatures on this list which do have much harder tame methods than this creature. Again, you're going to want to choose those weapons wisely that you use. Swords and pikes are going to be your best bet. I would arguably go for pikes because the durability is higher. Maybe the damage isn't higher, but you can always get some ascendant ones on there. Do take into mind that the durability of the weapons does drop a lot faster when the Mantis is wielding them compared to if you were wielding them, so don't judge it based on that. Either way, that's all the precautions for this creature to use it in a given boss scenario. Apart from also, actually, their health isn't the greatest, especially if you get some lower level ones, so be careful for that. But as long as the boss fight isn't too long, you will have a good time using Mantises in that scenario. Next up, I have chosen the Carcharodontosaurus for this list, as it does pay quite a good contribution to defeating any of the extinction bosses, that being any of the Titans and just the Alpha King Titan as well, the Beta King Titan, the Gamma King Titan, all of the bosses on extinction are going to be where you're going to use this creature, and it is your best bet really. Yes, you could still use Gigas, and Gigas will still be effective, but they are a lot less reliable than this creature, and let me tell you the main reason why. You probably know by now that the Giga has a blood rage, not a blood rage, sorry, a rage ability. The blood rage belongs to this creature, and essentially what that means is if it takes a certain amount of damage, in a certain period of time, because it is based on the timer as well, then it will take you off of its saddle and just go into full rage mode and just try and demolish everything around it. And if you're using it in a given boss scenario, it's going to be dealing quite a lot of damage quite quickly, especially considering, you know, they are the titans we're talking about. They tend to damage quite quickly, and obviously with a lot of heavy damage. They don't tend to just give small amounts of damage out over time. It tends to be quite rapid and very forceful, and sometimes the gigas can get out of control, and it's really not going to be your best bet. Also, the more you fight with these things, the more damage they'll do until their blood rage is full. They really are just more reliable than the giga for that reason, and that's why they're here. Now, the Megalosaurus is one of those where I find it is quite underrated, and you might actually consider the Rock Drake to be quite a good boss tame for its cheesing of the Rock boss fight. So, brief honourable mention there, but it is not on any other spot in the list. Anyway, talking about the Megalosaurus, a bit off topic to be honest. The Megalosaurus is one of those creatures where I find it is forgotten in the given boss fighting community, and I find it is a very useful one, and maybe it would be a bit of a pain to take it to that given boss arena, because it only really works well at night time. I'm not sure if that works on the island or in other maps like that where you're in a boss fight. Does it have a day and night? Are these things going to sleep through it? Either way, on Operation they are absolute kings of the boss fighting area, and obviously they excel in that for many reasons. They have the bleed ability, obviously. On top of that too, they are very fast, nimble, agile creatures, and this hugely attributes them to being great boss creatures. Yes, a heavy damage dealing creature is nice to have, but one which is also very mobile will give you a much higher chance of given survival in these boss fighting scenarios, and this really does. On top of that, on Operation you can use it for so many other things as well, and on other maps too. They are great versatile travelers, and they generally just pack a punch all the time you're using them. So if you tend to travel a lot in the night time, and if you feel like maybe you want to give these creatures a go for some boss fights, then sure, try it, and I think you won't be disappointed. In at number 7 we have got the Megatherium, and this creature is here because if you've ever fought the Broodmother, you will know how great these creatures are if you've used them in that boss fight, and this is just for one main reason. If they kill an insect, which in this case are the minions, or they're actually Aranios that the Broodmother spawns, but they're the minions of which the Broodmother spawns, it's going to kill those, and then it's going to get this insect buff, which essentially I think it's called like a rage buff again, something to do with that, and it's going to deal a lot more damage to the Broodmother and to all the other creatures around it as well. On top of that, is actually these things are going to take less damage too, which is even greater in a given boss scenario. And if you have a ute on top of it as well, I actually haven't included this in the list because this is just the fighters for boss battles, although I really should give it an honorable mention, as the ute is one of those creatures where it gets a gold star for being a great boss creature. But this is the top 10 boss fighters list. I probably didn't make that too obvious apart from in the title, where I think in the intro I actually just said boss tames, but you know, you can read, I'm relying on you for that. Either way, yeah, very good for the Broodmother boss fight, and the ute deserves a little honorable mention because it still can fight, and you know, you'll want one in a boss fight. Continuing on, we have got the Theri, and the reason why this creature is here is not just because its saddle is unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
It is because this is really a great boss creature for dealing with the dragon on the island, and obviously ASA is still kind of a new thing and a lot more people are playing on the island. Admittedly, Scorched Earth has moved a lot of players onto that, as honestly that is the best thing in my opinion ASA has to offer right now. But the Theri is that go-to for the dragon boss fight, and that is because it has an ability, the dragon not the Theri, where the dragon is going to shoot out loads of fire and it's going to deal tons of damage to carnivores. Actually, it's particularly offensive to those creatures, whereas the Theory does not fall into that category as it is not a carnivore, and it still packs a lot of punch in the damage department, has great health, great stamina, great mobility, and its weight isn't too bad as well. That doesn't really matter an awful lot in a boss fight as long as it still is enough to maybe carry a bit of food in it, and just, you know, so you can ride it possibly. Also, that actually does come to one thing. For food, you can't just chuck meat in this thing's inventory, although it can gather it, it does not eat it. And sweet vegetable cake is your best bet to healing these things quickly, but that is quite expensive, so that's the only real downside for using Theories in a boss fighting scenario. In number 5, we have got the Spinosaurus, and come on, when it comes to boss fights, this is another one of those underrated creatures, and I really do wish still that people use these creatures more for boss fights, because Rexes do seem to be all the rage. And although they are on this list later on, because I really do feel as if, you know, they deserve a place on the list as they have done a lot for people in boss fights, this could possibly be seen as a potentially better one. It's just considering the use of a Rex and the versatility that it offers, I'm having to put that creature higher on the list. It's just simply that has a point of higher status. But the Spino has a lot going for it as well. Admittedly, having a lower health stat though, it does boast even more damage than the Rex and a hell of a lot more mobility. On top of that, it is actually a pretty good underwater swimmer as well. Not obviously the best out there, but you could do the Moda with some Spinos if you wanted, and obviously if you're doing that on Gen 1 you'd be getting X Spinos anyway, so there is a boosted variant. They can also, when on land, get on their hind legs and deal even more damage. They can turn 360 on the spot, which a Rex can't do, which makes them invaluable for PvP potential. But you know, still, a boss fight's not PvP, but it can still be applied to any given combat scenario. It's just that is mainly used in PvP, and it's where the Rexes lack in PvP. It's why they don't actually get used all too much, because their ability is frankly quite rubbish, and if the thing that they're attacking isn't exactly in front of them, then there's a tendency that they'll miss, and they tend to be quite easy to kill off that way. But yes, the Spinos are at number 5. Let's continue on. This might be an unpopular opinion, considering I'm going to give it away that the Rex is in at number 3, but in at number 4 I'm putting the Aloe, because I find it is a really great boss creature. Not only is it small and very agile, it also does boast the pack buff on top of it and the bleed ability too. They really are great little fighters, and they're not the hardest to tame. You can even tame it 3 in one go if you build a big enough trap. Simply lure all of them in, and then boom, there you go. Once you've knocked them out and you've fed them, you've got 3 aloes, and a good 5 or so, maybe 10 if you are doing some of the alpha boss fights, will be enough for all of them on the island I'm talking about here, because I'm mainly generalizing to that map, because they really are very effective fighters. You could probably still do it with 5 as long as their health is high enough. That's the only thing they're really lacking compared to something like a Rex, because they'll probably be dealing more damage, and they are far more agile and just generally more convenient, especially actually if you're doing the oversteer, I find. Although I don't really typically use them for that boss fight, as it is a little bit too long, and I find quite a lot of the aloes do tend to die, especially considering even the Rexes tend to die and their health is quite a bit higher than something on the aloe. But I guess maybe if you brought enough you could do it. I haven't really done it all too much. I've done it once or twice, but that was on Gamma. I've never done the Alpha Overseer with aloes. I've only ever done it with Rexes, and then obviously a UT, because you've got to bring the UT in. It's not on this list because I don't really use it all too much as a general boss fighter, but I did give it a mention, as it definitely still can fight. I guess I've given it 2 mentions now. But yes, the Aloe really does deserve to be on this list. If you've never used one before for a boss fight scenario, take yourself a pack of maybe 5 and do one of the Gamma ones or a Beta. Actually, they could probably even smash through that with absolute ease. Maybe don't try the Alphas until you've got at least 10 of these things, and you're going to have a really great time. You're not going to regret taming one at all. At number 3, like I said, we have got the Rex, and I have to put this thing here. Come on, it boasts a lot of health. It has a lot of damage up its sleeve, and although it's not the most mobile, it really is the foundation of what is a great boss creature, and people use these things all over the place. They really are a go-to. If you never can figure out what creature you're going to use for a boss fight, the Rex is probably the answer that you've been looking for. It really does make sense. It is a big carnivore that is going to just generally pack a lot of punch in the damage department and be quite defensive in the aspect of its health is quite good, and that is where it stands apart from a lot of the other carnivores because its health is a lot higher, which makes it ideal for boss scenarios. Yes, you're going to want to deal loads of damage quickly, but you're also going to want to have enough health to withstand it, and again, that's where creatures like sometimes the Spino and the Aloe tend to fall a little bit behind, and some of the other creatures that I talked about much earlier on the list, which is why they're further back. The Rex is just the foundation of it all, and it deserves to be here. It is the OG. It deserves a respect that, you know, it actually doesn't tend to get quite as much nowadays, just considering how easy to tame people have them all over the place, but they really can do a lot, especially if you get some mutated ones on top of it as well, some health and damage mutations. Don't underestimate these things in a given boss fighting scenario because they will pack a punch and they're very much worth it. In number 2, we have got the Shadow Mane, and come on, when looking at this creature, you can probably tell why it is such a great boss tame. Yes, maybe it doesn't have quite the level of health as a Rex, but considering its insanely high mobility, its pack buff, its hydration buff, and the fact that it can just deal tons of damage, and you can get loads of these things relatively easily, especially once you've got your first pair, because the tame method is actually quite awkward. So maybe it's not the easiest from the get-go, but once you've got a good high-level male and female, breed those things up and you're going to have yourself an absolute army of Shadow Manes, especially if you get some mutations on top of it as well. They are the second best boss creatures that I can think of for any given boss fight, apart from obviously the extinction bosses. Just use Gigas or Carchondosauruses for that because they're in a sort of different league. You can even use these things for the Moda if you want, as they are very nice at swimming underwater and actually just underwater boss fights, of which there are only one of. I've done all of the variants of the Moda, Gamma, Beta and Alpha with this thing, and it did actually work pretty well. If you haven't done that before, again, give that a try. At number 1, we have got the Deinonychus, and this always tops my list for the best boss creatures. Some people just say, well, they're really feeble in the health department, you can just kill them off really quickly. Obviously, don't use these things for the extinction bosses, they will not last, but for everything else, also apart from the Moda actually as well, they are the ideal because they deal bleed damage to bosses as they can grapple onto them and just tear them to absolute shreds. I find they are just so effective, so mobile, so useful. They also have the pack buff as well, like the Shadow Mane, and yes, maybe it's only really as effective for one less boss than the Shadow Mane, so you'd be like, well, the Shadow Mane has to be better, but I find it is more effective for all those other bosses than the Shadow Mane, which is why I have to put it in at number 1. It is the king of boss fights for me. Yes, some people think differently. Some people like Aloes must be in the number 1 spot. Some people like Rexes must be in the number 1 spot. Some people would say Shadow Mane should be in the number 1 spot, or Gigas or Carchondosauruses for the extinction boss fights and they're just their sheer power. But the Shadow Mane, the Deinonychus always deserves to be in the number 1 spot for me, and I'm pretty sure my opinion will never change unless like the Deinonychus 2.0 comes out and it absolutely changes my perception of what the Deinonychus is, and I'm like, well, this new creature is just miles and miles better. But I still have not found that. Ever since Valguera was released, I've been using these things for my boss fights and pretty much nothing else. So thank you to my wonderful patrons Ekaterina Puchkova, Karina Thorne, Dominic Masijewski and Ethan Tapia, who have all supported me through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. If you want to join this list, then go join Patreon or YouTube members, but thanks to all of these guys.